Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. Of course, last night was AEW Dynamite on TNT. What an episode. What an episode as always. Feels like every week we are saying what an episode it was of AEW Dynamite. But last night, certainly, what an episode it was. So there is a ton of AEW news stuff to get into. First being, you can see it right there. The match is official. Bryan Danielson's in-ring debut will be against none other than the AEW World Champion himself, Kenny Omega, at next week's Dynamite Grand Slam show in Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York. What a show. What a show it's scheduled to be. We're going to run through the entirety of the card pretty much throughout this video because there was a lot that was announced for both Dynamite Grand Slam and Rampage Grand Slam. We've got two massive shows next week. Massive shows. So last night on AEW Dynamite, the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson met face-to-face in the ring once more. This time, however, Kenny Omega accepted Danielson's challenge for a match to determine who is the better of the two. Now, Bryan first made his appearance by walking down to the ring for a massive pop from the crowd. He was shortly thereafter interrupted by Kenny Omega and Don Callis, who took their time insulting Bryan's character. Now, Bryan insulted Callis and demanded that he talk to Kenny Omega one-on-one. He then explained to Omega that this isn't about the World Championship right now, and that he just wants to have a match to see who's the better between the two. Now, Kenny hesitated, and Bryan threw a few insults at the World Champion, but eventually he answered the challenge with a resounding yes. So the match will be taking place next week on Dynamite Grand Slam from Arthur Ashe Stadium. I've seen some people basically saying that they're surprised that Omega and Danielson is happening this quickly. I don't know if I buy into that. I think if you think that, I think you kind of overlook the importance of next week's show. Obviously, All Out was massively important a couple of weeks ago, and it was AEW's biggest ever pay-per-view event, did the biggest ever buy rate, and going into it, there was certainly a lot of hype and a lot of momentum going into that event. But arguably, certainly a discussion and an argument could be made that this episode of Dynamite next week is AEW's biggest event ever. For me, this encapsulates All Out. The two shows put together certainly encapsulates All Out because they have a real possibility next week to do the most viewers they've ever done on TNT, ever. You look at that post-All Out edition of Dynamite, did what, 1.3 million viewers? Given that it's Dynamite Grand Slam, given that it's in Arthur Ashe Stadium, given that it's got Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson, why wouldn't you put that as your main event for that big show in front of your biggest crowd ever? Why wouldn't you do that? Because in reality, again, that could, well, I think it will do, considering what they did last week in terms of the rating and the viewership for Dynamite. I think they're going to beat the record. I really do. I mean, the record is 1.4 million viewers. I think they'll be hoping to be doing the same. I really, really do. And whether or not they can do it or not, time will tell. But given the card they've put together, they're going to give it a pretty damn good go. I have no doubt about that. And look, it's a dream match. Of course it's a dream match. It's not the first time they've wrestled. Danielson and Omega have wrestled in the past. But it's the real first time that this Kenny Omega and this Bryan Danielson have wrestled. Arguably, you could talk with Bryan Danielson. He's not even... It feels crazy to say he's not in his prime anymore because he is, and maybe he's a better wrestler than he was previously, but he's worked a hard style. But certainly Kenny Omega at this point is in his prime. It's a dream match. It's an absolute dream match. It's something that Bryan Danielson has wanted for years. When he was with WWE, he always spoke about, I want to face Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega's the name I want to face. And as soon as the rumors and reports came out that Bryan Danielson was coming to All Elite Wrestling, the first thing that anyone thought about is, oh, he's going to face Kenny Omega. He's going to wrestle Kenny Omega. That's amazing. I never thought that match could happen. Oh, we're going to get Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And we are. We're finally going to get it. Again, it's a dream match. So I'm very, very excited for it. I think, given the fact it's non-title, I'm going to lean more on Bryan Danielson winning, to be honest with you. I think that obviously they can't make it for the title, and I don't think they ever were, but because of the way that AEW works with the ranking system and the wins and losses count and matter, Bryan Danielson realistically shouldn't come in and wrestle for the World Championship straight away. And if he did, he's not going to win the world title in his first match. Who is he? Hulk Hogan coming into WCW. It's just not going to happen. So, I given the fact that it's non-title, I think Bryan Danielson wins, and I think that sets up not in the near future, because I don't think that will happen. But I think it sets up sometime down the line that Omega and Danielson will happen once again for the World Championship. That depends, though, of course. Is Kenny Omega even going to be the world champion in a couple months' time? Who's to say that Omega doesn't drop the title at, say, Full Gear to Hangman Page? I think everyone assumes that the next world champion is going to be Hangman Page, but whether or not that will happen still, plans do change. They did change earlier this year because Hangman Page took time off and all that kind of stuff as well. And you had Punk and Danielson and other names set to come in as well. So I think Danielson will win next week. Whether or not there'll be shenanigans or that kind of stuff, I don't know. I really don't know, but obviously, I'm very, very excited for it, and AEW is absolutely loaded up that show next week, and Rampage for that matter as well, and it's just very, very exciting. It's a very exciting time to be a pro wrestling fan, let alone a fan of AEW. So this is one, it's going to be great. It's going to be absolutely great. CM Punk was on commentary last night on AEW Dynamite, and to be honest with you, what a job. I mean, I recall vividly, and it's one of the sort of the more fonder times I actually have a CM Punk in WWE, and I'm a big Punk fan, obviously. But when he was on commentary in WWE in 2010 with Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler, at a time that Michael Cole was really becoming insufferable, and that whole Jerry Lawler Michael Cole rivalry was just beginning, and it was too much. CM Punk was on commentary in 2010 for a brief period, and he was tremendous, absolutely tremendous. It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And he was on commentary last night for the majority of the show. Did some great one-liners. The one he did about Dan Lambert, I mean, I'll get to later on, but I thought he did a great job. And he does commentary for MMA as well, so he was really tremendous. So he was on commentary for the majority of the show. And then at one point, they're doing an on-camera, which you knew something was coming because they did that on-camera for a while. They were just talking about stuff. And Taz comes over and says to CM Punk, "You trying to steal my job?" And CM Punk's like, "I'm not trying to steal your job. What's going on?" And then suddenly out comes Hook, and Hook's face to face with Punk. Hook actually got physical. Oh, you know, the social media just exploded in both ways. And Powerhouse Hobbs then attacked CM Punk from behind, and it sets up the match next week because Powerhouse Hobbs picked up CM Punk and then I went to like power bomb him, choke slam, whatever you want to call it, through the announce table. The table didn't break, you know, classic Botchamania, I am the table. I don't know if it was meant to. It kind of felt like it was meant to, but it didn't. It looked like a really sucky landing, and I kept thinking back to like CM Punk when he was feuding with Ryback, and Ryback just missed the table, and I thought, oh, if this was CM Punk at a different time, he'd have got backstage and he'd have chewed out Hobbs, been like, "Don't drop me, you know, put me through a table," you know, all that kind of stuff. But hopefully I don't think that happened. I think Punk's fine. Anyway, because of that, he is going to be taking on Powerhouse Hobbs next Friday on Rampage. Now, Rampage next week as well. So you've got Dynamite Grand Slam, but you've also got Rampage Grand Slam. And Rampage next week is going to be 2 hours going forward, which for me is the right thing for that event, certainly. But I think it's probably the right thing just for that show in general. I don't know if they'll be able to do that, if TNT will want them to do that, be willing for them to do that. I'm sure given the success that AEW are having right now, more content for TNT, Warner Media would be thrilled. And don't get me wrong, I like that Rampage is a 1 hour show, and I do like the pacing of a 1 hour show. It's definitely more palatable to watch. But given the names they have on the roster, given the amount of talent they have and the struggle to get them on TV, if Rampage becomes a 2 hour show, yes, the time slot sucks. Yes, it's 10 p.m. till midnight, and that's not ideal. But for right now, it would probably be really beneficial. Really, really beneficial for AEW, because it would allow them to be like, okay, it's not as much of a trouble to get all of these names on television, and we can kind of not be so shoehorned and backed into a corner of like, how do we get these people on TV? We've got 2 hours. So, of course, this match as well, next Friday, will be CM Punk's first match on television, because obviously he had the pay-per-view match against Darby Allin at All Out, but this will be CM Punk's first televised match on free TV in over 7 years. So it's a big one. It's a really big one. Punk's going to be on Dynamite Grand Slam from Arthur Ashe Stadium next week in Queens as well to hype up the match. He's doing an interview with Tony Schiavone, so he's going to be on both shows, and Punk's going to be on Rampage. And I know some people would say, well, why wouldn't you put that on Dynamite Grand Slam? I think it's smart. The reason I think it's smart is because that Dynamite Grand Slam show is loaded anyway. It will do a good number with CM Punk wrestling or not, because you've got a main event of Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega, plus the other matches that have been announced for that show. if you want to do 2 good ratings, it makes sense to have Punk wrestle on the Friday. And also as well, given that's where Punk made his debut on that show, on Rampage, it's kind of becoming like the CM Punk show almost, isn't it? So again, I think it's a good move, and Punk said several times he wanted to work a match against Powerhouse Hobbs. He's getting it, and he's getting it on Rampage next week, so I'm excited to see that. Let's switch gears here and talk about Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was on social media yesterday. First of all, he congratulated Big E on winning the WWE Championship, but Bray Wyatt dropped a massive tease about his pro wrestling future. Now, former WWE Champion Bray Wyatt has assured his Fireflies, or fans, whatever you want to call them, that they will all be seeing him, quote, very soon inside of a pro wrestling ring. While responding to a fan on Twitter on Wednesday, Wyatt wrote the following, quote, everything will be clear. I'll see you all very soon. Revenge is a confession of pain. Now, through another tweet, Wyatt mentioned how fans have, quote, never seen the real me, a possible reference to the way he was booked during his WWE career. Now, it's been reported previously that Wyatt is expected to start with AEW soon. There's been rumors about him possibly making his debut on the September 29 edition of AEW Dynamite, which will be held in Rochester, New York. Of course, Rochester, New York is the hometown of the late Brody Lee, a very close friend of Bray Wyatt. The potential date for AEW, for Wyatt's AEW contract contradicts earlier reports that his 90-day non-compete clause with WWE would expire on Friday, October 29, a week before the AEW Full Gear pay-per-view on November 6. There's also been a discussion that Wyatt could end up with Impact Wrestling and that he could debut on the October 23 Bound for Glory pay-per-view in Las Vegas, but that looks less and less and less likely. I still think that whole September 29 report is BS. I know that's what Meltzer said, but I feel like he's got his dates wrong. I feel that's it. I think, again, when you look at it on paper, the 90 days when he was released would be up on October 29. And I think that Meltzer was trying to put 2 and 2 together and wait a minute, September 29, or he just remembered 29. He went, oh, wait a minute, September 29, that's a Wednesday. That's Dynamite. That's in Rochester, New York. All makes sense. It all adds up. And then someone went, no, it's October 29. But that's what Meltzer's saying, and it made its way to print, which would lead someone to say, well, if it's a mistake, it's a massive one. But look, time will tell. Going back to Dynamite last night, Cody Rhodes is back on AEW television. Rhodes returned last night on Dynamite. Last night's AEW Dynamite saw the return of the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes. This was the first time that fans have seen Cody inside of an AEW ring since August, when he suffered the loss to Malakai Black and teased his retirement. Cody's return occurred after Malakai Black came to the ring alone in his all-black hooded robe. What an entrance Malakai Black has. I know we've said it a couple of times, but man, it's a good entrance. It's really a great entrance. He then pointed out Malakai Black, popular actress Rosario Dawson, who of course is Cody's co-judge on the Go Big show, was at ringside. Also, she's in the Star Wars universe as well. She's just tremendous. She was in the Netflix Marvel universe. She's such a great actress. Malakai said, we have an enemy in our midst. Pointing out Dawson, he said, she's walking freely among you wearing the colors of the enemy. This inspired Rosario to enter the outer part of the ring to confront Black face-to-face. Cody Rhodes then appeared from the entrance of an arena stairwell and began to make a beeline for Malakai. Why was he doing why was he in the crowd? You're an EVP. Like, why wouldn't you be backstage? Unless it was part of a plan, I could say, right? Maybe it was the plan. Anyway, Cody's in a bright red, you can see it there, a bright red suit as well, which was, looked ridiculous. But while distracted, Rosario hopped on Malakai Black's back, kept him busy until Cody Rhodes could strike. The two men then brawled throughout the arena as the fans went wild. The segment was very good. And they were beating the hell out of each other with beers and all that kind of stuff, which was fun. I still say, and I said it on social media today as well, I still say that Malakai Black should beat Cody Rhodes for the second time. Then Cody Rhodes should get the microphone after the match and say, I don't get it. I don't get it. You fans are here, and I built this. Yes, Tony Khan was involved, but I built this. I helped build everything that you cheer for. The reason you're here today, the reason that there's a show on today is because of me. I built this. And yet I've heard you recently, you have the nerve to boo me? To boo me? I helped create this, and you want to boo me? The disrespect. And then he just tells the crowd where to go, and then we get heel Cody Rhodes. I think that's the way to go. Now, last night, the crowd wasn't particularly mixed to Cody, it must be said. But that's because he made a surprise return. I think if you've heard some of the Cody Rhodes reactions prior to him going on his hiatus to film season 2 of the Go Big Show, it was mixed to say the least. It was mixed. And I just feel that there is just a need for him to freshen things up. And whether or not, I don't think he necessarily, if he turns heel, he has to join the Elite. He doesn't. He doesn't have to do that because he's got his Cody verse, right? Heaven forbid we touch that. My concern is I just don't know if I necessarily see that happening because he's got, obviously, again, the Go Big show and he's got the Rhodes reality show, but he's not John Cena. He's not in a point of, you could never turn him heel because how could you do Cody Rhodes heel? He does all this PR. Everyone knows the game in pro wrestling. It doesn't matter what character he plays, if it's a good guy or a bad guy. It's pro wrestling at the end of the day. So I'm interested to see that match next week because I think I could get very angry by the outcome. Talking once again about Rampage Grand Slam next week, we're going to have a trios match. You can see it right there. It's the Super Click Party facing off against Christian Cage, Jungle Boy, and Luchasaurus because Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, and Christian Cage will face Adam Cole and the Young Bucks in a trios match next week. Now, this came after Adam Cole made his debut last night on Dynamite. We'll touch on that in a second. And he called out Jungle Boy, Christian Cage, and Luchasaurus. This is what Jungle Boy said backstage, and actually a pretty good promo. For someone that said he didn't like doing them, I thought it was a good one by Jungle Boy. He said, quote, "There's been a lot of fuss about Adam Cole and the Elite, and I don't really get it because, quite frankly, Adam, I have better friends than you. I certainly have better hair than you do." And then Christian cut him off. He said, "Sorry to cut you off. I'm just thinking here, but I don't know. Adam does have some pretty good friends, you know what I mean? The Super Elites. They use their EVP status to throw him a lifeline and drag his sorry ass out of developmental. Here's the thing, Adam, we accept your challenge. And you know what? Since you're used to losing the Wednesday Night Wars, you better add Friday to that list as well. See you at Grand Slam, baby," which is what Jungle Boy said. Now, as I mentioned, Adam Cole made his in-ring debut earlier on in the show to open the show, and we'll touch on that in a second. A lot of people are making a lot of going, I can't believe he said like developmental in the Wednesday Night Wars. People get angry about it, and it's a jab, and the reason they do it is because people react to it. If people didn't react to it, they wouldn't do it. But of course, AEW, look, they won. They won, and it was, people can say it wasn't a war, but for a brief moment it was. NXT never really won, anything like that. But nevertheless, look, AEW are very proud of themselves. They weren't meant to win that. WWE looked down on them and thought, we'll put NXT on Wednesdays. We'll make sure they don't succeed, and then they'll disappear after a couple of years or after 18 months. And they didn't. They won, and they've gone from strength to strength to strength. At this point, it's almost laughable, isn't it, to have Dynamite and NXT on the same night, because this version of Dynamite right now, the star power that they have, would just absolutely blow NXT out of the water at this point. So, yeah, I didn't have a problem with them bringing up. It's kind of those things. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Speaking of Adam Cole, as I mentioned, he made his in-ring debut last night on Dynamite. He defeated Frankie Kazarian. Cole picked up the pinfall victory after hitting the Panama Sunrise and then finished off Kazarian with the last shot. As I mentioned, he called out Cage and Jurassic Express after the match to a trios match next week on Rampage Grand Slam. So again, you got to see these massive matches next week, not just for Dynamite Grand Slam. We'll go through the card when we finish up the video, but you've also got Rampage. You've got literally 2 pay-per-views, Wednesday night, Friday night. I'm thinking of doing a watch-along for both and a post-show because they're essentially pay-per-views on free TV. I think it would be naive if I didn't, to be honest. So I think we're going to be busy. I think we'll be really busy next week, and I'm excited for it. Very, very excited for it. Also last night on Dynamite, we saw Chris Jericho interrupt Dan Lambert and American Top Team. Now, while confronting American Top Team's Dan Lambert and the Men of the Year, Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky, last night on Dynamite, Chris Jericho referenced his backstage altercations with Brock Lesnar and Goldberg earlier on in his WWE career. After making a few cracks about the meatheads in American Top Team, Jericho mentioned how he and fellow Inner Circle member Jake Hager are not intimidated by MMA fighters. This is what Jericho said, quote, "You rely on intimidation and scare tactics, but you don't intimidate us. Big Jake here is undefeated in MMA fights, and I've been getting in skirmishes backstage with MMA guys my whole career. I got into it with a UFC champion Beast a few years ago, and a few years before that, I had a shoot fight with an MMA-trained Raging Bill backstage. They didn't kill me. I don't think you can either." I kind of find it funny. I know Goldberg likes to think he's all MMA, but no. The Brock one is badass by Jericho. I still, to this day, Jericho getting in the face of Brock Lesnar is tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. But it was made official next week at Dynamite Grand Slam. We will have Jericho and Hager versus the Men of the Year. I know that a lot of people don't like the whole Dan Lambert stuff. And again, I'm a bit indifferent on it. It hasn't been that great. Although I think the segment last night did work. I will give them credit. I think the segment last night did work. Again, I'm not massive on the whole Dan Lambert shtick and all that kind of stuff. It is what it is. But I did think it worked last night. He had a ton of heat. And it wasn't go away heat. I found the segment highly entertaining, it must be said. I found it entertaining. It wasn't a case of, I hate this because it's bad. I hated it because I thought it was good. And, Dan Lambert getting angry and screaming at the crowd, and then Jericho, screaming back at him. I thought it was good, look, it was fun. It was fine. So, and also as well, it means that Jericho's not going to be on commentary for Rampage next week, which again, ain't a bad thing. Really isn't a bad thing. So let's go through what's been announced for Dynamite Grand Slam next week. It's a huge show. It's an absolutely massive show. And again, arguably the biggest show in AEW's history, it must be said. So you've got Malakai Black versus Cody Rhodes. You've got Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston versus Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer. That was made official on last night's show. You've got Britt Baker defending the AEW Women's World Championship against Ruby Soho, which should be a tremendous match as well. I expect Baker to win. MJF is going to be facing Brian Pillman Jr. They continued their angle last night on Dynamite 2. And then, of course, you've got a huge main event of Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson as well. You've also got Darby Allin and Sting going up against... who are they facing off against? FTR, rather. I got there in the end because they had a segment last night. There was so much that went on that show. When it came to the Sting segment, Sting took a pile driver. I said this in a tweet. If I just said to someone just 12 months ago, oh yeah, Sting's going to be in AEW and he's going to be taking a pile driver by FTR in the ring, you'd be like, what? What have you been smoking? That's crazy. So that's crazy as well. So there is so much on that show. I mean, even the MJF segment, look, MJF's going to win. There's no doubt about it. He's going to get his win back against that he didn't get. He lost it all out. But even I know people think it's too far, and the whole stamping on the ground and talking to Brian Pillman Sr. by looking down and calling his mum Methany. It's just, I don't know. I've got a bit of a dark sense of humor myself, and I was just a bit like, oh, it's heat. It's heat at the end of the day, and obviously Brian Pillman Jr. is okay with it. It's not, if he was uncomfortable, they would obviously not do it. So I thought it was fine, and I just thought it was a great show. I thought it was a great show, and I'm super, super excited for next week. It's just, what a great time to be a pro wrestling fan. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these AEW news stories you've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the video as well. And be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner too. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.